know why, but you are watching the Madness Comic Network. Are you mental?
Electric bolts from a stormy sky, leather wings of a dragon's flight. A psychic sword cuts through the night, a fiery heart standing ready to fight. Southern nights they rise and soar, God in the south, yeah, they're ready to roar. From the shadows to the shining lights, that they'll protect you day and night. Southern nights. Years in shadows, hiding away. A hero awaits to emerge into day. His legacy lives in his son by his side. They're chasing a truth that can no longer hide. Captain Thunder and Blue Bolt, this is where the storm begins. Fighting unfairness and clearing his name, lightning strikes and justice wins. On a catwalk, Teresa struts her stuff, but the fame and attention just isn't enough. When the darkness descends, turning day to night, she takes to the skies with a blinding light. She's a sight to behold, sexy and powerful, brazen and bold. She's turning up for the fight, rooting out evil and shining so bright.
There's a shop on the corner with a sign that glows. Step inside if you dare, where the oddness flows. Ancient whispers echo through the dusty air. Shelves of fallen deities, all beyond repair. Gods and services, mystical merchandise. Gods and services, wanna roll the dice. Zeus is in the bargain bin, thunder on the cheap. Hades sells for half off while his minions creep. Aphrodite's beauty faded over time. Now she runs the counter in this celestial five and dime. Gods and services, mystical merchandise. Gods and services, wanna roll the dice. Gods and services, wanna roll the dice. Zeus is in the bargain bin, thunder on the cheap. Hades sells for half off while his minions creep. Aphrodite's beauty faded over time. Now she runs the counter in this celestial five and dime. Gods and services, mystical merchandise. Gods and services, wanna roll the dice. Gods and services, wanna roll the dice.
Get the latest fantasy horror anthology, Gods and Services New Location, from Critical Blast Publishing. Available at criticalblast.com or wherever books are sold. And you can find that link right below the video in the description. Welcome, everybody. I'm RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. Specifically, the publishing arm tonight. We're doing a book launch of our latest anthology, Gods and Services. And with me tonight, we have some of the contributors to the work that took way too long to take that. But
hi, everyone.
It's done. It's finished. Everyone's
done.
Paid, even if they haven't got their checks yet. They're paid. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully we'll have a few more people pop in. I know we only had 10. So we've got 30%. That's actually a fairly good percent. Jonah, why don't you go first and tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing career and what interested you about participating in this particular project?
Well, I think that, it was a great target idea. And immediately I thought this mad idea that there's a demigod who only creates wishes, which is half the wish you wanted. And so from that point on, it sort of wrote itself. And my career, long time, I was theatre writer and then radio drama writer and then film writer and short stories as well. And at the moment, I'm messing about with what started off as a short story and is now rapidly becoming a rather messy novel, but we'll see.
I really like that idea of the demigod and the half a wish. It reminded me of the old joke about the guy who got wishes, but whatever he wished for, his worst enemy got double.
Yes.
So for his third wish, he said, "I wish you."
The one that always intrigued me is the horror story called The Monkey's Paw, which has become a classic. And whatever you wish for, you get the worst possible outcome. In my case, it wasn't the worst possible. It was the sort of one you weren't expecting outcome, as it were. But yeah, I mean, I just thought, what a great idea. That's why I wanted to write it. You were saying, is it Damascus? You were saying, what's the novel about?
Yeah.
It's based on the principle that there's a shop that talks about all the people that live in the shop. So the entire narrative is from the shop's point of view. That all these weird animated things that run around inside its shop. So yeah, it's a shop. And what's nice with this one is that we have a local bookshop. This is quite a small town on the south coast of Wales. And we have a local bookshop that's run by a woman who's half nuts. She's wonderful. And it was such a resonation between that and the story. And when I showed it to her, she reckons it's the best thing I've written. But then she thinks everything is the best thing I've written. She's great.
Just tell her to carry the book. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I'll get her to grab some copies now.
Kay?
Yeah.
Here and, tell us about yourself and your story and what inspired you.
Okay, so like I said, my name is Kay, and I tried to send out to as many anthologies as possible, and this was one that I was excited to write for. Damascus and I have, chatted a little bit on social media, and I saw that they were associated with the Critical Blast, and that was one of the reasons why I was kind of excited to work in the anthology. This was about a year ago, so it might take me a minute to remember exactly where the concept came from. I've always liked the idea of Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box is their like baby's first jump scare in a lot of ways, and the Greek god Phobos also kind of has this quality of like jumping out to scare people, and that was kind of, I think, where the idea came from of someone who needs someone else who will give people a good scare because they're kind of an underdog. and I think that's where the character of Kestrel came from. I believe that was the name of the character. Kestrel, I started getting a little bit sounding like a hippie mom with a lot of some of the character names, because bird names are fun. I like giving characters bird names sometime, but I realize that makes me a little bit hippie-ish, or my character's hippie-ish in some ways. She named herself Kestrel, but yeah, I think that's the big things with it.
I've got a novel that one of these days I will eventually write. It's one of several I will eventually write, and I've got a hippie mom in it. Her name was Peace Mackenzie, but she's been married 3 times, and she kept her third husband's last name because he was Adam Lovejoy, and just being Peace Lovejoy was just too good.
That's amazing.
Okay, you've got a novel too. Gotta mention that too. Don't forget to mention your novel.
Yes. I have a novel coming out next month. Thank you, Damascus. I actually have this cover is not the actual book cover, but this is one of the art copies. As I said before the session started, I was kind of downstairs doing a little promo for that at this art center where I'm working. But yes, this is The Last Ballad, and is that me or? Sorry, sometimes you might hear a train come by because I'm literally right next to the train station. So The Last Ballad reads, there's more than one way to be haunted. After the deaths of her abusive grandparents, prodigal daughter Rhea Ballard enters self-imposed exile and returns home to the stately Ballard house for one last goodbye. She expects to pay her respects, field awkward questions, and let her family name die with her. But when she discovers that she had inherited everything, she must stay in the house and ask its caretaker while it's under probate to put her family's affairs in order. As she digs into her family's dark secrets, the spirits of the house reawaken and her own traumatic memories resurface. With the help of the family cook, Morgan Reyes, an alluring woman with her own dark secret, and the supernatural skeptic groundkeeper, Andy Higgins, she must solve a century-old mystery and put the spirits of the estate to rest before she becomes one herself. And that comes out, I believe, June 23rd is the official publication date. And
I've got a review copy of that one.
Yay!
I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to dive into that one.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's coming out next month.
Excellent.
So Damascus, who the hell are you? I mean, I've heard your name.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm Damascus Mintzmeyer. I've had about 30, 35 short stories published in various anthologies over the past 7 years, something like that. First short story I had published was in 2018 in an anthology called Fire, Dragon, Djinn, and Demons. It was about that story was about an old guy who finds a genie's lamp in a resale shop, and genie comes out. He's an old guy on a pension, but he's very, very comfortable with his life, and he doesn't want anything. So the whole thing is this duel between the genie and the old guy. Genie's trying to get him to wish stuff, and he doesn't want anything. That's where like all started. But I met RJ probably in 2020 with this book, The Devil You Know. It was about the story I had in that was the story I had in that was A Night at Satan's Palace, and my favorite email ever from getting a positive acceptance letter was from RJ when he said, "Damn it, Damascus, 2 days left. 2 days left, and I wouldn't have had to read anymore. But you had to come along, fuck it up, and cost me money."
Amazing.
I've got another story I've got to publish. I'm supposed to be kicking back, feet up, letting it coast until the deadline's over. No, in under the wire. And he's been writing for us ever since.
Yeah, he made the offer if I wanted to do reviews, and I was like, hell yeah, I love getting access to movies and books. So, and my story in Gods and Services, it's called Godsend, and it actually took a really long time to write because the story is about a woman. Her sister was kidnapped, and she's trying to find her. And there's she goes to the Gods and Services store and she finds this pendant of Diana, goddess of the hunt, and she gets these visions that of her sister being held captive somewhere, and she follows these visions and is on her drive through like the American Southwest, and she comes upon like a truck stop, and she finds out that her sister's actually was kidnapped by a serial killer who keeps all of his torture implements in his truck in the back of the semi rig, which actually based on there was a real serial killer in the Toy Box Killer who did something like that. That was where that idea kind of came from. But I like the idea of Goddess of the Hunt and turning the tables on the serial killer. So that was where they came from. But that wasn't the first idea I had. The very first idea I had was to try to use Dionysus somehow, and I couldn't get it to work. I tried 2 or 3 different versions of that. Like one version was someone buys like a cup of Dionysus or something like that, and the whole town gets taken over by the spirit. And then I was like, well, that's like too much like a second season of True Blood. So I settled on this, and I think it worked out pretty well.
Nothing wrong with a good bacchanal. So my contribution to all this, I mentioned before, was the wraparound story. We have never done that with any other anthology before, except for the original Gods and Services, which was why I had to, keep the tradition up. If you're just joining the show, and even if you've been here the whole time, I've not explained the conceit and the concept of the Gods and Services series. The Gods and Services series is about the little pop-up shop. Wasn't there yesterday. It won't be there when you try to find it again. And it's full of junk items. And they're just randomly priced. You could find a Tiffany lamp for $5. You could find some dirty Chinese takeout cups for $7,000. But the trick is that whatever you buy comes with a god attached to it. This is an out-of-service god. They're unemployed. They don't have anything to do. And now that you have made a munificent offering, the god is obliged to make your life better in the eyes of the god, of course. The entire conceit was actually inspired by a very old movie starring Tony Randall and Burl Ives called The Brass Bottle. And now we're back to wishes, Jonah. This is where Tony Randall finds this giant brass bottle and he's polishing it up, and Burl Ives pops out. He wants to make his life better. And hijinks ensue. This actually came out before I Dream of Jeannie.
Oh, cool.
In fact, Barbara Eden played Tony Randall's girlfriend in the film. So,
That's pretty cool.
It actually inspired the TV show to come forth. But I thought it was interesting, to have an item that has something celestial attached to it that says, hey, thank you for helping me. Let me help you. And have no idea exactly what helps you. It's like, back in my day, we sacrificed the virgin to the volcano. Let me do that for you. No, please don't. But the last book had a married couple walk into the store because the husband's like, I go to the coffee shop here all the time, and I go straight to the bookstore next door, and there's never been a store in between. There's not even been room for a store in between. So he's questioning the proprietor, who is Hiram Priest. Not exactly subtle. Hi, Priest. Right? In charge of all the gods. And my inspiration for him came from an old independent comic book, not independent, but Charlton, called Midnight Tales. And there was a host, all the horror stories in there, called the Midnight Philosopher. And he was just this tall, lanky, professor-looking guy with the lab coat on and a big old shaggy mop of gray hair. And just he looked like the cartoon version of Egon Spengler from the Ghostbusters.
From the real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, kind of like that. So that's when I'm writing Hiram, that's who I'm seeing. I'm seeing this New Englander who's kind of all gray, clothes are gray, skin's a little mottled gray. He's just, laid back. Doesn't care what you think because he knows what's real. And, they end up getting something that's going to... I heard somebody beep. Somebody's trying to come in. Lauren, as soon as your devices connect, I can click on this and bring you in. Not sure what's happening to you there, but I see you trying.
I saw the name Hiram to me was the American series Hiram Holiday. Do you guys remember that?
I do not remember that.
He was sort of like a superhero, but he was tiny and he had a bowler hat and an umbrella. And it was an American series. But then I'm a lot older than you guys. So it must have been in the 60s or something like that.
Oh, I'm looking at it now. The Adventures of Hiram Holiday. And that was Wally Cox.
And I'd never heard the name Hiram apart from that series and the name you gave your proprietor.
It was played by Wally Cox, who I believe was the
That's right,
voice
yeah.
for
And he was sort of completely innocent and bland in a world that was full of mad people.
Yes. He was the inspiration for the character Underdog. His voice and mannerisms, Shoeshine Boy and all that. So
I've seen Underdog.
yeah, well, who hasn't? You know, I mean, it's I had a path I was following, and a mental squirrel ran across my cerebrum. I lost where I was going. I was kind of hoping that Lauren was coming in. It was the beat. Told me somebody was coming. Joni, you mentioned your writing career. You've been at this for a while. I mean, the big question I'm going to ask next is why? Why are you writing? Why do you work yourself this way?
I think you write because you have to. I don't think you write for sort of positive reasons at all, apart from getting rid of it, you know. And the story was, I had a girlfriend, we're talking a long time ago now, early 1970s. And she decided I was a writer, and she said I should write novels, and I had a go. And then we went to see a play in Cardiff, the capital city of Wales. And it was supposed to be a comedy, and I said that was terrible. I didn't laugh once. I could do better than that, I said. And she said, you're supposed to be writing novels. And I said, oh, give me a weekend. And I wrote the first act of a stage play. And I gave it to her, and I went to the pub, and I said, come and join me when you've read it. And she walked in, and she said, you're a bloody playwright. And it hadn't occurred to either of us that that's what I should have been doing. But that's what I did for years and years. And then I went on to radio, wrote a couple of radio plays, which went on here in Britain, on the BBC. And
Anything we might have heard of?
Well, and if you get BBC stuff, yeah. They were both on Radio 4, which is the sort of, what can I call it? It's not middle of the road. I mean, it's a sort of slightly intellectual, if you like. But the radio plays were in the 90s. And then I started writing films, and I direct them as well.
Oh, cool.
What films have you?
Well, what happened was me and a friend of mine were writing film scripts and not getting anywhere. Because you send them off, and we were winning competitions, you know, but that doesn't get a film made. So we thought, oh, sod this, let's do our own. So I ended up directing, and she ended up producing. We've done 5 films now, short ones. And they've won awards and all that. So I say, if you want to go into film writing, don't try selling it to studios. Make it yourself. And these days, it's really easy. You know, you can cut the whole thing together on a computer now. Whereas in the dear old days, when I was in the BBC as an audio guy, you had what they called a 3-machine edit. So there are 3 videotape machines running into each other in order to make every single edit. So nowadays, easy. Go and do it yourself, I say.
Yeah. Well, you know, writing was always that way too. But if you made your own book back in the day, it was
I never thought it was worth self-publishing. But I've got friends who say, "Oh, you ought to do it," because you're like you, Damascus. I've had 40 or so short stories published, and you're saying, "Well, am I going to bother?" But at the moment, I'm going to finish this bloody novel. It's getting on my nerves now. I'm only up to, I think I'm at about 46,000 words.
I'm waist deep in a novel too. I've been battling it off and on for about 4 years now. right now.
Well,
It's actually part of it. Actually, it's funny you mentioned about wishes. Part of it is about wishes, like part of the plot. It seems to be the general
Yeah.
theme tonight. It's called right now. It's called Better the Devil, and it's basically, if you want to get down to it, it's a what?
Watch
It's about
that
a guy-
title.
yeah.
But
My
it's about a guy.
title, at the moment,
It's a
my
guy,
title is seven Magpies on My Roof.
Oh, cool.
Because I don't know, do you have the rhyme in America? One for sorrow, two for joy.
It's
I've heard
usually
that before.
crows, I think, but
Yeah.
Here it's
I-
magpies. Yeah.
have,
And
it's not
seven
really
is
that
for a
often.
tale that will never be told. So
Yeah.
right at the
Yeah.
beginning, I'm telling the audience they're not going to get the end of this story.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Heisenberg
this
had
is
to make an
non-alcoholic here. I said, right.
Who's your kitty?
That was Heisenberg.
Love it.
Ah,
Her sister
That's cool.
Schrodinger is around here
I
somewhere.
was going to say
Or is-
Schrodinger was
She both is and is not around there.
They're both very uncertain, and I never know what they're up to. And when I check their behavior, they change it.
Mhm.
Kay, why are you writing? Why do you torture yourself?
Well, sort of like what Jenna said, what else am I going to do? I've been studying, writing as an art form since I'd say, I was writing, short stories and stuff as a kid, but freshman year of high school was when I first started taking formal creative writing courses. And I got I went to my high school specifically for the creative writing program, the Center for Fine and Performing Arts. And then my college degree is also creative writing. And then, and now I'm just plugging away at trying to get my name out as much as possible, because I'm not sure. I have a lot of stories to tell, I guess. And what else am I going to do? Yeah, so.
I don't know. I've read. I remember. I've read 2 or 3 of your stories in different
Yeah.
anthologies that I was reviewing, and I didn't even realize until because there was one. I remember there was one in the dinosaur anthology.
Yes,
I really
and
liked.
the sacrifice,
Yeah, that's right.
cult
the religious
anthology.
story. Right.
and
I
I'm
think
not
the-
sure if there's another. There might be
think-
another.
Did you have any in the Darklit Press Beach Bodies or the?
Yes, I did. I
That one.
was that one was the Fountain of Youth story.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Because I remember when I would review a book, and I remember the second one or the third book, I was like, this name sounds familiar. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'd go back and I'd go reread the old review and go, wait, I really like that one. And then I'd go back and read the other and go, wait, I really like that one too. Because every time I review an anthology, I always try to
Mhm.
give my top 3 or 4 that I like in the book. And I was
Yeah.
always like, wait, I like this. And I go, I like that one too. And I was like, she's got something here. And I was like, so I
Mhm.
remember in the dinosaur anthology, it was I think it was my favorite story in the whole book, actually, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
the
that
Loch
was
Ness
cool.
monster story.
Yes, it was actually
Mhm.
kind of how we met, and then just by
Yeah.
happenstance, I had seen your name in the slush panel. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Even before just based on those stories, even before I read it, I was like, this one's going to be good, and I wasn't disappointed.
I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't disappoint. Yeah, I've been working at it for, I think, my 5th year anniversary of my first short story acceptance is this December, and then my first publication anniversary is next year. So yeah, I've been doing a lot. I think now I'm at maybe 100 short stories.
Wow.
For in different anthologies. Like I said, part of it is kind of a numbers game. I send out it to as many places as possible. And so I have a pretty heavy trunk at this point too.
I call that
but
the shotgun blast method.
Yeah.
You're just like,
Yeah, but whenever I find a unique anthology like Gods and Services, I always write something specifically for them. Because, well, partly it's a practical reason.
We're pretty niche with our themes whenever we put out an anthology. I mean, You know, when we did the Fables Next Door, you know, it's hey, you know, this character
Yeah.
from Fables still the same person, still the same, you know, story, but you know, it's 2024 now, and they just happen to be living at the end of Maple Street, next door to you.
Mhm.
That one right there.
Yep.
And it's funny how many stories, and this is how lazy I am as an editor. Damascus does all the heavy lifting. He
Yeah,
used
you'd
to
be
read all-
surprised how many people send in. Like the number one reason we reject stuff isn't because of bad writing. Like most stories come in are actually really good. The number one thing doesn't fit the theme. Like
Yeah.
people will just send in the most bizarre, off the wall crap that you won't even like. What I remember one of them, I think was for one of the W No books, was we got like a ghost cat pirate story. I remember this distinctly, and RJ and I are both like, why? Like, and what do you always say? People just like unload the
They've got stuff
trunk
in their desk
stories.
drawer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I try to keep the trunk stories just to, if it fits the theme, I will send it. And if it is a general theme, then I'll send it. And then when we have something like Gods and Services where it's very specific, then I write my own, then I write something specifically for that anthology. And I was I was glad that you guys accepted it in part because I was like, this is so specific. I don't think I'd be able to send it anywhere else. Which is a good thing. I really liked the concept of it too. And as I said, I also have done the editing short story collection with the wraparound. Mine is called Till the Yule Log Burns Out, and it's available now. It's a Christmas themed anthology, not to shamelessly plug something else.
Put it in the chat. We'll plug it up there.
Go for it.
Yeah, and but I love doing anthologies with wraparounds. It's very like Creep Show and Tales from the Crypt. I love all of those, so I was excited to do this one too because it was a really cool concept.
Tales from the Crypt.
Yes.
I've quite enjoyed I've written a couple of westerns, which for a geezer who lives in Wales is asking a lot. But that's been good. I've had a couple of those published.
We just had I just interviewed a couple of guys who wrote a horror western just a couple of nights ago. It seems to be a thing that's taking off.
Well,
Yeah.
that's with these themed anthologies. One was a horror western,
Oh, cool.
and yeah, actually, they were both horror westerns. Now I think about it, one was I had a vampire in it, and the other one was a gunslinger who shoots an Indian who's wearing a ghost shirt. So the bullets go straight through the Indian, and the Indian is still alive.
Oh, right. Because I remember that's right. The ghost dance. They thought if they wore the
They had shirts, and they
they'd be
thought that they were
right.
impenetrable to bullets.
Right. I've co-written one horror western story. Somewhere.
Because we're getting ready to do another anthology, and now I'm wondering if we should be considering some sort of a western, if that's what people are wanting to read right now. Yes, I am crassly commercial enough to just put my toe in the water. And
That would
see
be cool though.
what
Those are fun to write.
It's an odd one though, isn't it? I mean, I can't watch most westerns, having read "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee." Suddenly I can't stand a lot of the old westerns, which is just shooting Indians as soon as they come over the hill, kind of thing.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way with westerns.
But then there's a lot of interesting things, like the Indian with the ghost shirt, who's invulnerable.
Yeah, I feel much the same way. It's very complicated, and I feel like a lot because westerns are so mythologized.
Yeah,
it's people forget how it was also like it's very mythologized as this glamorized version of the West, and there are some elements that are interesting, like the number of Black and Hispanic vaqueros, the power of women who were essentially sex workers and madams who ran these towns, and that's all very interesting and stuff. But it's also against the backdrop of a genocide, and that brings up a lot of complicated feelings. I cannot watch most westerns unless it's like a modern western, a modern story with Western vibes and energy kind of thing, like Winona Earp or something.
We got a question
Jay's
here.
got a question.
Yeah. I think there was about 45 to 50 submissions. There really wasn't a ton for this book.
Again, because it's very niche.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's not like, what was it, The Devil You Know Best, or was it The Monsters Next Door that broke you?
The Devil You Know Best. We had like, what, 400 submissions?
Oh.
Something like that. And it,
Master-
he didn't know. I was reading
Well,
every single story, like all the way through. And I didn't know until he told me. He goes, if it sucks by paragraph 3, it's not going to get any better. Just go on to the next one. And I was like, okay, that's a good rule of thumb. But yeah, I was like spending like all my time. I was like spending literally all my time. I was reading every single story, beginning to end. Driving myself nuts.
He would like, he's like, next book, find someone else to do this. I'm like, what happened?
400 stories would break me too.
Yeah, and especially 400 stories that only 20 of them are going to be read. So 380 stories you're reading for nothing. Like here, I tell him, I've told other people, said the one rule of submission of a story is not to write a good story.
True.
Not to have the thing met. The very first rule is don't annoy the editor.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask for a William Shunn formatted document, by God, turn in a William. I can pull up the document. If it's not William Shunn, I don't have to start reading it because you didn't. Why should I?
I'm about to start teaching, or hopefully we'll start teaching creative writing courses at the place where I am right now. And I have PowerPoints for both courses, and in the PowerPoints in all caps for both of them, and multiple times is read the guidelines. Always read the guidelines, because that's an easy way. Listen to what the editor is looking for, because that's an easy way for them to eliminate an otherwise good story, because they, if it's supposed to be anonymous, make it anonymous. If it's supposed to be William Shunn, just make it William Shunn. If they ask for single quotation marks instead of double quotes, just find and replace all your double quotes. Maybe save it to a separate document and then do that, so that you still have the original document and you don't have to go through and reformat it again. I've learned that lesson.
Yeah. Well, when I was in grade school, I remember distinctly this test, and it didn't matter how many times they gave it to us in the different grades. The same people always failed it. But it was the teacher would just pass it out, and the very first line said, "Read all instructions before moving forward." And the second line, put your name at the top of the paper on the right-hand side. The third one said, "Draw a square in the lower right-hand corner." And it's like, you get to the very last one, it says, "Now that you've read all the instructions, only do 2 and 4.
Yeah. I may or may not have failed that once.
That's a dirty trick.
It is.
Yeah, well, they told
That
you.
reminds me.
I find the interesting one for me is writing in American. So I put it through the American spell checker on my machine, and that will it will have the subtitle on my files list, American. And I do the same with Australian too. I've never done it with Canadian. I'm afraid they get American, but
that's
I
also
don't know.
good.
It's the good thing
I've had
about
a couple
Microsoft is
stories.
it'll do that.
I've had a couple stories published in Canadian anthologies that specifically requested like English spelling. So I had to go like retrofit them to submit them there.
Yeah.
I can sympathize with that, because the first book I had published as an author was Alice's Journey Beyond the Moon, and it got published by Telos, which is a publisher over in England. They had the Doctor Who franchise for a while, and it was the third Alice story by Lewis Carroll, and it was all written as though we had found it, and I was striving for authenticity all the way through this. In fact, so much that I had mimeographed copies of the original Alice's Adventures Underground, and in his own handwriting. And the editor was kicking it back, saying, "Hey, we need you to fix the contraction. Your contractions, you're using too many apostrophes. Like for can't, I would have like, or wouldn't, I would have would apostrophe N apostrophe T. He's like, what's up with this? I'm like, I'll fix it. Here's what I was going for. And I showed him, the original manuscript. And that's how Carroll wrote. He would use an apostrophe for every letter that was missing. And the other's like, hang on, just keep doing what you're doing.
It's also things like, I'd say rubbish bin, but you would say trash can.
Mhm.
So I've got to do that
Right.
as well, and sidewalks instead of pavements. But,
Right. Elevator and lift.
yeah.
Right. Apartment and flat.
And what's it?
I've read-
This story that I wrote in this one is quite interesting because it's based on a pair of braces, as I would call them, but suspenders, as you would call them.
Right.
I
I remember that in that story.
Yeah.
And we each have a completely different bum in our countries.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Bum here, it means your ass, but it also means the back. So there's
And
such
over
a thing
here,
as
a
bum
bum is the
boat.
person who doesn't have a job.
If you've got a boat that you're towing, a small rowing boat behind a big yacht, that's a bum boat.
I think my favorite difference is thongs and rubbers in Australia, I want to say. A thong
Oh, hey,
in
Julie.
yeah.
Thanks for watching.
A thong in Australia is a flip flop. In America, it's a kind of underwear, and
Yeah.
a rubber. And some a rubber is an eraser here, and can also be a slang term for a condom, which I always found kind of amusing. That kind of linguistic confusion.
It's kind of funny.
Hmm.
So this would probably be the best time to, since it's just us now, if you're watching and you are wondering what people are doing here and how you can get involved with this, pay attention to the website criticalblast.com, because we're getting ready to launch our next anthology call. And it's going to be Damascus, drum roll, more Monsters Next Door. Out of all the anthologies we've done, I think the Monsters Next Door has been probably the most well received that we've done. Yes, reach for a copy, Damascus.
This one, right there.
I'm just going to scribble it down.
Hmm.
So the concept here is that it's modern day. Well, sometimes it's modern day, sometimes it's not. I'll leave that open, but traditionally we're looking for modern day. It could be the countryside, it could be the city, it could be an apartment, it could be a Victorian house. Wherever it is, it's your daily life. You're a normal person living your normal life. And next door, it could be Cthulhu's summer home. It could be, the Draculas have moved across from overseas. There are monsters next door. And this sounds like a very unclever way for the publisher to make money off of people, but it's really true. If you want to know what we're looking for, pick up the books we've already published so you can see what it is we've paid for. And we are a paying. We do pay for the short stories. It's minimal. You get a check and you get a copy of the book. It is enough to qualify you for the American Horror Writers Society. So you can say I'm professionally published. Here is my check. Here is my story. Yada yada. So if you are into that kind of thing where you need to have a membership somewhere, you qualify.
And it's a pretty broad theme, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the house next door to you. Like in the suburbs, it can be an apartment. In our first book, there was a story set in a convenience store, and it's like set, and there was like monsters in the neighborhood. They're living around the convenience store. So it can be like a hotel room next door, all sorts of stuff. Anything that's next door to you, adjacent to you, monster there.
Yeah, and Monsters Next Door was the first time we included artwork in those stories. Before that point, they'd always been, your traditional
Cool
like
little,
Gods and Serpents.
and like a little from the old comic books. They look like the old ads from old comics.
Yeah, but flip it back so you can see what we did for each story. We
There
gave
we
it a
go.
book cover.
That was for my story.
Love it.
92
So
Zelensky.
you got the title and the author name, and then when you turn the page, it just jumps right into the story. There's none of the traditional setup for things. Lauren is in the private chat. She's here, folks. You can't see her. It's like we're having an episode of Ghosts on
Yeah.
the chat. So she's talking to me
Jay
in the
was in the
room.
private chat. Lauren and Jay both had stories, also in Gods and Services Next Door for people who were watching.
Yeah, Jay's in the public chat. Lauren's in the private chat in the back room here. She's literally logged in, but can't connect her devices.
Yeah, I'm getting her chat on my setup here.
Yeah, y'all can see the private chat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
watching can't. So she's asking, does the monster next door have to be literally next door, or can it be at a place you work? And like Damascus was saying, we had the story in the last one where it was all set in the convenience store, people coming in.
That's right. Anywhere that's next door to you, wherever you're at.
Mm-hmm.
I started because RJ, you mentioned this when we were on the show the other day that you were gonna do the next one, and I was like, that night after the show, went out and started my story. I'm gonna write for it.
Where are the guys going this time?
Mexico. They're gonna be in Mexico this time. They're gonna be end up in. They're gonna end up in a.
Sorry.
Okay, I do these two guys named Stuart and Bruce. They're in their 70s. Okay, they go on vacations wherever. They end up running afoul of supernatural creatures no matter where they go. Okay, the very first one was called A Night at Fat Diablo, and they're all called A Night at wherever they're at, and it's like survival horror. It's like survival comedy horror, and that's the very first story was A Night at Fat Diablos. They stop at a roadhouse like in Arizona somewhere when they're on a guided motorcycle tour, and it's vampires and zombies. They got to fight their way out. The second story was the one that was in the WNO. That one was A Night at Satan's Palace. They go to Las Vegas. They go to a strip club. The strip club's inhabited by demons trying to collect 666 souls to open up a portal to hell and let Satan out. They got to fight their way out of that. The third story was A Night at Shugga's Premiere. They go to a movie theater in Hollywood. They get like advanced tickets because Bruce has like a nephew that has he works in the movie industry. So they go there. Turns out Lovecraftian Shuggas have taken over all the actors in Hollywood and are trying to use the movie that they made to hypnotize the human race so they can open up a portal and let all these Lovecraftian creatures through. And they got to fight their way out of that with like a buzzsaw.
Amazing.
And the fourth one is in Monsters Next Door. That's the night the Zelinskys. They decide they're not going to go anywhere. It's kind of like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Decide they're going to stay home. Everything's going to be nice and quiet. They stay in the neighborhood. They're playing cards with their buddies. And wouldn't you know it, there's these gigantic radioactive mutant spiders in the empty house next door that the one guy's supposed to be feeding the dog. And they come out of there, and then of course they have to go save the sewer workers, and all hell breaks loose. So the one I'm going to write for more Monsters Next Door is they go to San Diego because Stuart's wife's niece is getting married. So Bruce decides he can get them a deal to go to San Diego. He one of his relatives works at a travel agency. So he can score him a deal on airfare and a hotel. The caveat is he has to go with them. And he talks Stuart into going across the border to Tijuana. And then they get on the wrong bus and they end up way down in the middle of nowhere, Mexico, at this rundown, resort hotel. And unbeknownst to them, there is a cult who is sacrificing travelers to the Aztec death god in the room next door to where Stuart is going to be staying. So they have to fight their way out of that because the Aztec death god escapes, starts possessing people, and now they've got to get out.
Amazing.
I was wondering where you were going to get next door out of this travel log here, but
that's out.
I've got a good next door here. The town I live in has got a history that goes back to the Bronze Age. Constant
cool.
people living here, and then digging up the field that is 100 yards that way from me. And last year they found a whole lot of Dark Ages bodies. So they're fascinated because they're working on what these people were eating. Dark Ages here being 5th to 7th century.
That's cool.
So yeah, if I want monsters, they're just in the field next door to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Yeah, you could do a story out of that. Field Next Door.
Yeah, you could definitely make a
Definitely.
story out of that
Yeah.
one.
Absolutely.
I definitely
That'd
think
be
so.
good.
So that's
Well,
where
they
we're
only just-
going. Go
They
ahead,
only
Chris.
discovered it was interesting because the local badgers were digging up human bones. And they found out, they worked
I
out that
love
they were
that.
Dark Ages bones, but they couldn't get at them because they weren't allowed to disturb the badgers.
Yeah, aren't they like an endangered species in Wales or a protected species?
No, not particularly endangered, but they are protected.
Okay.
By Aslan. Of all people.
Hmm. Yeah, by the Welsh dragon on the flag, mostly.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes, well,
absolutely.
Welsh dragons everywhere, mate.
Hmm.
So now that I've said what we're doing next, not counting that book, what are all of you doing next? Do you have something lined up that we should be looking for? And Jonah,
Well,
we'll
there's the
start with you.
novel I'm battling on with, but I'm writing another film for somebody.
Ooh.
Short
Oh,
film,
cool.
Hmm.
which is
Are you
good
going to
fun.
be? Are you going to be like producing it also, like helping
Well,
make the
I
actual film?
may be directing it. What happened was me and my friend, we're both writers, and she said, "Why don't you direct one of mine?" So she produces and I direct. And I was an audio engineer in the BBC, so I've watched other people direct and I've worked out how to do it from there.
Okay.
And directing it's in one sense it's really difficult. In another sense, it's very simple. You just got to make sure you know you've got the material together to get into the editing suite, and not have to go back and shoot something that you forgot.
That's how I got into publishing. You know, I was an author for Telos. I was an author for the Remo Williams franchise, and I started watching what they did. I'm like, I can do that. So I started putting out the calls for stories and doing the publishing side.
Well, it is, and so much of stuff now is do it yourself, but
Yeah.
do it good.
Mhm.
You know, don't
Mhm.
don't make it look like an amateur film. Make it look as if you knew what you were doing. Lie to people.
Yeah, yeah. Until you get it, until you convince yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you have coming out next?
Well, aside from the novel that's coming out next month, I'm working on getting another one published. Fingers crossed that it's one of those books where it's always I also need to go back and edit it. But it's one of those books where it's like they really like this except for one thing, and so it just doesn't quite make the cut for a lot of years. A lot of publishers in their open call years, like their years over open call. Plus, you'll have
hear
to
the
forgive the
train.
train going by if you can hear that.
I love it.
I hear it.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm literally right next to a train station in the place where I'm hanging out right now. And so I'm hopefully going to get that accepted somewhere. And then, there's the whole editing phase and stuff. And regardless, I need to go back and work on it. And then the other thing is just sending out a lot of short stories still. I have how I'm able to get out so much in a certain amount of time is that I have a list and I go month by month. So any open call I find for May, I put in under the May list, and then like the May deadline and stuff. And so I try to work it through.
I do something like that too. I'll make like a database and just go down the line. And people ask me, they'll be like, how do you deal with like a story rejected? And my actual answer is send it to the next place on the list.
Exactly.
That's what I do. It sounds weird, but that's exactly what I do.
It's basically after a certain point when a story gets rejected, it's just kind of like, oh well, moving on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have to grow a thick skin about it and realize it's not something you do to take personally, because when you're a writer, I was rejected 10 times before I got my first short story acceptance for $5 and a contributor copy.
Right.
And so, you have to, I think in general, it's 10 rejections for every one acceptance minimum.
There's an article I read some time ago. If you don't get 100 rejections a year, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Or people suggest making that a goal of getting 100 rejections a year.
And they can be personal. I wrote a Santa Claus story, short story that basically said that old Nicholas was being punished for having done something heinous to a child way back in the Dark Ages, and he was having to go around every year and beg penance of children who were asleep and couldn't forgive him, and he would just be released onto the world every year to do this. And I sent it off to Weird Tales, and because I thought this is the kind of thing that Weird Tales might go for, because it was really dark and it was like super dark. And the rejection letter came back that opened with the paragraph, "While we occasionally publish the story in bad taste."
Oh no!
I weirded out the Weird Tales.
Any feedback is good. I find when you just get rejected or not even replied to, that's a waste of everybody's time.
That bugs me more than anything, is when you send something out and just never receive an answer at all. I can take a no.
No
when
is,
you get nothing.
I think the funniest genre of no I've gotten is just, "I'm not feeling it." It's like, okay, fair enough. I think my worst fear is going to be when I get negative reviews on stuff. Because
again, you've got to bear in mind that it's one person's opinion.
Exactly. It's just one person's opinion, and you're putting your own work out there for the world to read.
I do have what I call the grudge list, which is who never replied.
Yeah, unless they set your expectations that they don't reply, and it's just like, if you don't hear back from us in 2 months, then just assume that it's a rejection. But again, you got to set set their expectations.
Because then you get 400.
And then there's the people. Yeah. Then there's the people that take the reviews like a little too seriously and start sending you death threats and stuff.
Yeah,
I've never got that much.
That's happened.
Yeah, that's also not good.
RJ and I know about that one. Yeah, we know about that.
The reviews where someone just doesn't get it or gets the story wrong, what you were trying to say or something, those can be rough.
Sometimes you get reviews though where they obviously completely misunderstood the story or didn't read it, and they put the wrong people's names in when they're replying to you, and you think, how do you manage that? There's a nice one I had from an American company, Film Script, which involved in my script, it had Henry VIII at the beginning of the thing. And they said, we really think that you were a bit superficial about Henry X. And we've never had a Henry X. Eighth was as far as we got.
That's funny.
You mentioned before that you go through the calls for anthologies. Where do you find them now? Because all the big houses that I knew of have closed down. Rayland was like the go-to spot, and they're no longer in existence.
I found there's quite a lot of groups on things like Facebook, which is short stories asking for submissions.
Yeah, I do the horror tree usually.
Yes, I do. I hit that one.
Yeah, that one. Whenever I see an open call, I just save it to my phone, and then any that I find on social media that other authors, like other author friends, are promoting, I will save. And there's also Moksha and Submittable and Authors Publish. Authors Publish is a newsletter that you get to your email. It's usually you get a couple emails a day of different open calls for different kinds of things, sometimes agented books or unagented or short stories. Right now I've mostly done the horror tree because I mostly do genre fiction. So that's one of the better resources for it.
There's another one called Literarium that I use sometimes.
Yeah. The Sinister Scoop too.
Oh, interesting. I don't know that one.
That one, it's fairly new. It doesn't update as often, but it's.
Wait, what was that? What was the Damascus? What was that? Literarium. Yeah.
Okay.
The reason I asked is because I want to be able to put a call out, and I'm like, well, my call disappeared.
Well, yeah,
can't-
there's about 4 different groups that I look at on Facebook, at least. So I couldn't tell you what they are off the top of my head. But,
Yeah, Facebook,
these- all
social
these
media,
things out there.
that's a pretty common one. I think Critical Blast, I just follow you guys on Instagram. So that's how I
I've heard
found.
they're not reliable.
Mhm.
These next anthologies should go much more quickly.
Yeah.
As I explained, I had to write,
Mhm.
and I couldn't write anything until I had all 10 stories in to know what I was writing around. And then, of course, we were going through a business formation. It was no longer just Critical Blast using my wallet. It became an LLC of its own right, and we had to get corporate checking accounts set up and everything. That just seemed to take a long time, too.
Yeah.
But now that we're back in the swing of things, we're going to be doing more Monsters Next Door. And following that, I think the next one after that is going to be, I've been on my shelf for a while, Time in a Bottle. And it's just going to
Yes.
be time travel.
Finally.
stories.
I
Mhm.
love time
Finally.
travel stories. Yes. That's my favorite kind of science fiction, actually. That and alternate reality stories.
Mhm.
Those are my 2 favorite kinds of sci-fi.
Oh, I could go on a fan rant right now about
Yeah.
Black Mirror because I just watched an alternate reality Black Mirror episode, which was, if you watch Black Mirror, then you've watched it.
Mhm.
If you haven't, watch it. It's a really good one. The girl with the pendant,
Absolutely.
who she's just like holding her pendant, and whenever she's driving this other girl crazy, and it's like little Mandela effect things where a woman has her boyfriend has worked for Barney's Chicken forever, and the guy says, "Yeah, it's going to go to Bernie's Chicken." She's like, "No, it's Barney's Chicken." "I'm pretty sure it's Bernie's." "No, my boyfriend works there at Barney's." And the girl who's driving her crazy is holding her pendant, saying, "No, it's always been Bernie's Chicken." And she proves it, and it's always been Bernie's Chicken, and the hat has changed and everything.
Mhm.
So she's just like,
That's
and
awesome.
of course,
That's
it's
amazing.
science fiction, that's magical. So it was like really weird. So watch for that. I've also got a more generic one in the work called Fantastic Voyages. A lot of this is like my cover designer and I. We had the covers mocked up. We know what it's going to look like now. But I've always loved portal stories.
Mhm.
First novel was an Alice story. The Narnia stories. The wardrobe. I love portal stories. So Fantastic Voyages is going to be a series of portal stories.
Awesome.
Mhm. Love a
I
good
could
portal
send
story.
Stuart and Bruce through a portal.
Actually, I might have something that would
I
work
wish
fit for
Jack Lemmon
that.
and Walter Matthau were still alive because they are Stuart and Bruce in my head forever.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I could send them through a portal somewhere. That would be really funny, actually.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to end the show here. There's a really long video, about 3.5 minutes. We're using the Comic Madness Network tonight for that, so we're going to be running their promo. I want
What
to
day?
take off.
I got one more question. What day does the submission start for more Monsters Next Door?
Soon. I've got to change the submission page. So I've got to do some. The same thing that delayed this book. I've got to do some work.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
So will you email us with that?
I can absolutely do that.
That'd be
I'll
good.
be-
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that would be awesome.
So you'll all get an email from me. It'll be this week sometime.
Excellent. Good.
Other things. We've got,
Okay.
we've got a logistics
Mhm.
shipping business also that we run for comic books and other productions. So we're kept busy. And Lauren just said if we love portal stories, read her novel Blood Will Out. It's not serious fantasy at all, however. So it's another one that we want to look at. And Authors Publish is the best that she has found for story submissions. So thank you for that. I've got to keep checking the back room here because she's the ghost in our conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Dagon's Dress. This is Jay Neera's story in there, by the way. That was a very fun story. That was very
You're welcome, Jay.
Lovecraft.
Yes, I liked it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, guys, thank you for showing up. I do appreciate you. Again, folks, the book we're talking about is Gods and Services, New Location. It's the second book in the series.
Yeah.
Be sure to check it out on Amazon. Of course, you can always
I
get
have
these.
got one, but it's in the other room.
Well, I'm glad you picked it up from Amazon. You can also get them at
Yeah, I
Crystal
just
Blast.
grabbed it there.
little- So And the spam bot is going to have the last word of the night. So thank you, spam bot. Appreciate you showing up. With that, we're going to end the stream, and hopefully we'll be meeting again sometime in the next several months to launch another book you're all in.
That's right.
Great to meet you all.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It was nice meeting you, everyone.
Yeah, nice to see you all.
Click on the tube and feel the vibe. Every show you crave right here live. Heroes and villains clash in the night. Madness Comic Network sets it right. Scroll through the list, find what you need. Epic battles and fast-paced speed. From capes to cosmic space delight. Tune in and watch your favorites ignite. On Facebook, share the thrill so grand. On X, the buzz across the land. Madness Comic Network all around. In every episode, joy is found. Uploads, they never end. Superheroes and their friends. Catch every twist and every turn. Madness Comic, you will yearn. Stay up to date with every twist. Madness Comic, don't miss a gist. From laughter to tears, every mood. Madness Comic sets the groove. Click that button and subscribe. Catch the wave and ride the tide. Join the fun, join the craze. Madness Comic brightens days. Hey! New uploads, they never end. Superheroes and their friends. Catch every twist and every turn. Madness Comic, you will yearn. Stay up to date with every twist. Madness Comic, don't miss a gist. From laughter to tears, every mood. Madness Comic sets the groove. Click that button and subscribe. Catch the wave and ride the tide. Join the fun, join the craze. Madness Comic.